Hi, Girl Scouts of Ohio's Heartland. I'm Kelly Roderick, Assistant Strength Coach to the Columbus crew. Missing soccer just as much as you all are, I'm sure. Welcome to my home. So currently at home like the rest of you, and hopefully you guys are also finding ways to continue to stay active and obviously healthy and somewhat positive in this difficult time and situation that we're all in together. So in light of that, I do have your questions that you guys submitted and can hopefully answer some of those to the best of my ability. To give you an idea of my background, I actually played field hockey in college. So a little bit different background coming into this, probably not what you expected. Just like every other child, I played soccer at some point in my life, probably, I think it was 4th and 5th grade. So still played it, but a very long time ago. But I will answer these questions more with a strength and conditioning performance lens, which is what I do with the guys on a daily basis. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so this first question is from Paisley Joe, and I think Raina, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. But both of you kind of had similar questions in terms of goalkeeping. Paisley asked, I was supposed to start my first season of club soccer as a goalkeeper and wanted to know what some tips that I have for goalkeepers. And Raina wanted to know what she can do as a goalkeeper to keep her skills up during this time. So to answer that question, I actually work with the goalkeepers and do their programming. So something that I think is important, especially at a younger age, is to first off just look at it as try not to be so specific and focused on trying to do exactly what you need as a goalkeeper in order to progress. I think right now during this time, it's more important just to stay active in general. So try to do things that maybe you would normally do as far as a physical activity. I think that that's important to get out there, be outside, have fun, stay active and fit in a different way than you normally would because you might not get to do that moving forward once you get back into your routine and everything else. So something to think about. Definitely just try to stay active is my first recommendation, and believe me when I say that that's going to go a long way and with all sports. So that's not even just from a goalkeeper's perspective, but in general, to stay active and fit. The second thing that I want you to think about is in terms of goalkeeper skills, there are specific things physically that we look for in goalkeepers, like, power, their ability to produce a lot of force in a quick amount of time. You want to be able to do that. So there's that, and then hand-eye coordination. So any kind of activity that involves hand-eye coordination is going to also be able to help your reaction time, which is the third component, right? You want to be able to be reactive. So games that involve you to think quickly and react right away. So working backwards again, one example would be any kind of drill that you can set up even on your own as a cone drill, to have someone, if you have someone else there to tell you a color to run to, or hopefully obviously still staying within the guidelines of what's going on, but if you do have someone that can help you with this, I think it's helpful. And that allows you to react and get to that cone as quickly as you possibly can. So that's just a really easy example, I think, in terms of your reaction time and reaction-based training. That's all going to be really helpful. But something as simple as wall ball is going to be helpful, right? So like wall ball is an extremely fun activity. But if that's easy for you to do with a limited amount of people, and even Foursquare, obviously within 6 feet. So try to be careful about what you're doing. Obviously stay safe. It's hard during this time to come up with plans, so I can understand your frustration. We're in the same boat with our guys as well. So trying to keep their minds as active as their bodies, which is difficult to do during this time. As far as power development, what's going to go a long way for this time? I don't know what kind of equipment you all have access to, so that's obviously going to play a role in what you can and cannot do at this time. But power is essentially force times velocity. So how much force you can put into the ground and the speed at which you can create it. So mechanics are going to be huge. And at a time like this, when you don't have a lot of equipment, something to work on, is an easy thing to work on would be just your landing and jumping mechanics, and being able to really solidify those so that when you do get back to the field and you do get back to some type of strength program, because strength is going to be the main thing that's going to develop that power, especially at the foundational level. If your mechanics are solid, it will transfer. So I think that you'll be able to reach that potential even more if you have the good mechanics. So any kind of mechanics, really, jumping, plyometrics, and running mechanics are all things that you can really fine tune. So doing specific running drills that I'm sure you've done before, or box jumps and really working and fine tuning that form. Those are all going to be really helpful and things that you can do with little to no equipment. So those are going to be my biggest suggestions that you can do, kind of not knowing what you have access to. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Maybe not, but hopefully. Okay, the next question is from Claire, and she wants to know, do you have any specific training tips to help someone shoot the soccer ball with more strength and more power? Okay, so obviously there's a lot that goes into that, right? So more on the technical side and your overall positioning and technique, that's going to be probably something that your coach works with you on, because that's going to be equally as important. So you want to have that efficient technique and get yourself in the right position to be able to strike the ball with the maximum amount of force. So if your positioning is off, that's not going to necessarily help the amount of force that's going to leak out, and you're going to lose the opportunity to put more force into it, if that makes sense. So mechanics and overall technique are going to play a huge role in the amount of force. So that's something that, over time your coach can work with you to fine tune, and in practice it's going to obviously help. Now, in terms of putting more force into that, what's going to help with that is stronger muscles, lower body strengthening exercises. So anything that you do in practice, that's also going to help. From a strength component, I would say, any lower body exercises that can help build in strength, that's going to help you put more force behind the ball. So, lunges, squats, even sprinting, that can also help with that. So in a periodized plan that's safe, but those exercises are going to be the key builders and putting more force into the ball and being able to run faster, jump higher, et cetera, et cetera. So just building that overall lower body strength is going to be really, really key in terms of your amount of force that you can actually put into the ball. So that would be my biggest recommendation with that and strength training and power. And so we kind of discussed on what power is, and then obviously more force. In order to do that, you need more strength. So basic physics, right? Okay, so this next question is from Savannah, and Savannah wants to know that what she can do. She hasn't been keeping up with her running since they have not had practice, and what is a good way to start back up and stay motivated? Well, first off, I just have to say that, Savannah, you are not the only one that is struggling with motivation at this current time. So definitely not alone in that. I think a lot of people right now are struggling to maintain some type of normalcy during all of this and figure out a way to continue to do the things that they love, or find a way to stay active when that might have been something that was keeping them happy, and now the gyms are closed and nobody can go anywhere. So definitely not the only one struggling with this. But my biggest recommendation, and what we've discovered with the guys right now, is that having, we're apart and we're not together as a team, but we're still there for each other and we're still in support of each other. So I am in contact with several of the guys, every other day, sometimes on a daily basis, and calling, texting, FaceTime really helps. But holding someone accountable, I think it's a lot harder for you to not do what you need to do if you're trying to stick to a schedule of training it's a lot harder for you to face someone, even if it's via phone call, and tell them that you didn't complete that work, right? Rather than not having anyone to answer to. So having someone that can support you, and maybe it's a teammate, maybe it's just a friend, maybe, it's a parent, I don't know, whatever works for you in terms of that support and what you would need. I think it's helpful to have a teammate, and you can call each other on a daily basis, and when you don't want to do it, you can vent about it, and then misery loves company, right? So I think trying to motivate each other is going to help us all get through this, and realizing that even though we're apart, you're still stronger together and helping each other through it. So that would be my first suggestion, is to find someone that can hold you accountable, and then you can call when you don't want to do it, and who can talk you into it. So that would be the best thing that would be helpful. And maybe number 2 would be to have a set schedule and control your time, because you're so used to, if you're anything like I was at your age, you're so used to having something to do one right after another, and having your schedule all laid out for your day. So that is completely different right now, right? So I think trying to pick out your schedule and create something that works for you, and that's an appointment. So when you're going out there to work, that is an appointment for you to stick to, and you have to be there. So that's the way I look at it myself. If I don't tell myself what time I'm going to work out the day before, so not the day of, the day before, if I don't tell myself what time I'm going to do it, it usually either gets pushed around, it's not as great, I don't allow myself enough time, or I don't do it. So I think that you have to tell yourself what time you're going to do it and schedule that, and it's an appointment that you cannot miss. So you cannot be a no call, no show, right? So that's something that I think is helpful to get yourself motivated, at least, during this time, and then knowing that you're not alone in this. We're definitely all struggling to find that motivation to continue to do those things and hold ourselves accountable. So find that buddy. It definitely will help. As far as the second part for Savannah's question and how to get back into running, my suggestion would be to start small, and even like I said in some of the earlier questions, just stay active. Just do something that keeps you moving and go from there. It's always harder to get started, but once you get started, it starts to become a little bit easier day by day. So if you're taking a look at your running program that maybe you've set for yourself, take it one day at a time, and then take a look at the week and look at your overall volume of work that you've done, and you can maybe either, depending on how you're feeling, increase or decrease it. And then I would also suggest, because with soccer especially, depending on, I think you play soccer, I'm not sure, but if it is soccer, going out for a long run, that's going to help with your cardiovascular capabilities, and that aerobic capacity. But in terms of soccer specific training, you're still going to lose a lot of the speed, change of direction, and agility work and power, and that's something that you want to be able to try to maintain. So just making sure that you're mixing up your running a little bit, and not always just going out for that long steady state run, because you want to be able to incorporate either some intervals or shorter distances that are at a higher speed, to help keep that fresh and continue to develop that in this off season. I don't know, what is this, off season? During this odd season that we have, that's in between a season and an off season and a real season, and I don't even know. But we'll figure it out, right? All right, so this next question is from Jessica, and she asks, what advice do you have for being a sports team captain? So I was actually a team captain in high school, and I've been lucky to come across a lot of great leaders in my development as becoming a coach. And one of the biggest things that I think is influential as a captain and just as a leader in general is having your thoughts align with your words, which then align with your actions. So being in complete alignment as a person, I think, can be really powerful to others, and being able to have that influence, because when we're judged by others, or not judged is the wrong word, but when we're looked at by others, we're not evaluated based off of our intentions, right? We're evaluated based off of what we actually do in our actions. And so that's something to keep in mind of. You could have the best intentions and try to say, yeah, we're going to go out there, we're going to work as hard as we can today at practice, but then you can't not work hard and just kind of sandbagging it one practice and not dragging your feet. So that doesn't really match, right? So you have to be in alignment with what you say and then what you do. I think that that's really, really important as a leader and goes a long way in developing the team culture that you want to have, which at the end of the day, being a captain is really trying to embody that team culture and what's set by the head coach and reflect that. Because if you don't have that as a team, I think it's hard to be successful and lead the group. So you're obviously going to have different styles of leadership, and maybe you're a slightly different person in the way that you lead. But I think that you can always be true to that and really think about what goals that you have and what kind of leader you want to be. So that is my biggest recommendation. And then obviously also just having the confidence and owning your own confidence, because in sports in general, I think that's probably the best advice I've ever received, is to own your confidence, right? And that nobody takes that away from you, not a situation, not one bad rep, but your confidence comes from all the times that you've been successful and all the times that you've had prior to that, that have gotten you to where you are. So missing a ball in the first minute of the game is not going to determine your confidence, right? So having unwavering confidence is also going to help in being a good leader and having someone to look up to for others. So I think definitely working on a couple of those things will make you a great team captain. And being positive and trying to get to know everyone, I think, is also important, especially at the high school level. It's definitely a little bit different at the high school level because there are a lot of I don't want to say cliques, but groups of friends and that happens in all teams really, and that tend to gravitate towards each other. But unfortunately, as a captain, you have to be able to have influence over all the different groups. So really making an effort to get to know everyone on your team, I think it goes also a long way in being a good leader. So hopefully those tips are kind of what you're looking. Okay, so this next question is from Lori, who is the membership manager, and she wanted to know what other sports I played growing up. Well, I pretty much played anything and everything. I was a very odd, active kid, and my mother to this day says that I never really wanted an off day, and would freak out if I didn't have practice or something. So I really enjoyed being active, and I started off swimming at a very, very young age. So swimming was my first sport, but I also played soccer, like I said, for a couple of years. I played lacrosse because my friends were doing it. So anything my friends were doing, and I wanted to be a part of, I would try. I played softball for several years. I was a dancer for about 5 years. All while doing other sports too. Don't worry, I didn't just quit the other ones. I was, like I said, crazy. And what else did I do? Wow. Obviously played field hockey. Missed my main sport. I played field hockey. I started field hockey in the 6th grade, and that was something that I loved as soon as I started it. So as soon as I started field hockey, that was my love, and continued to play that, and had to decide between field hockey and swimming ultimately when I was a sophomore in high school. And that is when I ended up picking field hockey and ended up going to Michigan State as a 4th generation Buckeye, which was tough for my parents, right? But don't worry, I transferred back to Ohio State, and it all worked out. So those are the sports that I played, but that is also something that I recommend. definitely don't specialize early on. I recommend doing sports that either complement each other or diversify your skill set and your physical abilities, okay? Obviously, you can't play everything under the sun. Don't be like me. But pick a few. Pick 2 or 3. Even 2 is enough. But just staying active early on, I think, is really important as an athlete and for longevity. So her second question was, do I play any other sports now? And at the moment, no, I do not. Picking up soccer, by osmosis, no. I contribute, somewhat to our drills that we have to do on a daily basis. Nothing crazy, like I'll ball shag, and if I need to for a return to play athlete, be able to kick the ball, and I'm athletic, but working on those skills. So pretty much soccer is what I play. I would consider outside of sports and everything else. We do a lot of pickup games as a staff, which is helpful for everyone. Not everyone on the staff, unless they're one of the technical coaches, played soccer. So I think that's always been a lot of fun for me, and I like to stay active and get in there with them and definitely hold my ground if I need to. They don't push me around. No. But we have a lot of fun with that. And I'm also a weightlifter, which I picked up in grad school. And that is something that I've enjoyed and competed with a few times in the snatch and the clean and jerk. So definitely it's somewhat of a hobby that I do on the side. But yeah, our schedule is quite a bit unpredictable, as you can imagine, so not as much time to do other sports fully. So I try to just stay active as I can, and play pickup soccer with the rest of the staff, which is fun. And Lori's third question is, how do you balance multiple activities? That's a good question. I don't know if I do balance them. But growing up, like I said, I've always busy. So I got used to a very jam-packed schedule, and my mom was a very organized person. And so that was helpful early on. But when I did quit field hockey in college, so I sustained a pretty bad injury and ended up transferring to Ohio State. And that was actually when I started coaching. So I'm grateful in a sense that things happen, or I think things happen for a reason, and I had the opportunity to coach at high school, and so I got involved that way, and this led me to coaching. But I also worked as a personal trainer. I was a full-time head coach, and I interned with a radio station and worked at as a photographer for the student newspaper. I think that's all I did, but I was crazy, so. But that was something that I did. As soon as I quit field hockey, I was like, I don't know what to do with my time, and filled it with everything else because I don't know what it's like not to do multiple activities. So I think if you're used to that, great. If you're not used to that and you want to try to balance more multiple activities, or you're finding it being a hard time balancing that work-life balance, which I am unfortunately probably still finding, I think you have to, the same thing as before, you have to stick to a schedule that works for you and be able to be very organized in that schedule. And if that means scheduling time for you to sit and do nothing, that could be helpful. I think you have to know yourself and get to know yourself, and I spent a lot of time doing that and kind of know what happens if I don't have a day off, or if I know this for myself, that if I don't have at least one morning where I can wake up and stay in my pajamas for an hour and a half at least, maybe 2 hours, and wake up a little bit slower than I would normally, I probably would go insane, right? So I just, for whatever reason, if I don't have that kind of a morning throughout a week, like if I go for a couple weeks without that, I start to struggle. And now that's something always within my control, but that's something that I know, and so in the back of my head, I can at least be ready for it and mentally, and try to do something else to help with that stress. Not that that should really stress anyone out, but just an odd thing that I've noticed about myself. And certain things like developing a routine that's going to help you balance those multiple activities, and learning how to say no. That's yeah, that's probably my biggest piece of advice is learn how to say no, and learn what fulfills you and what you enjoy, because say no to the activities that you don't know that will actually give you that fulfillment or that you enjoy. So I think that you have to be able to decide what you spend your time with, because time is valuable, and it's something that you don't get back. So you have to consider what you value and what you want to pursue with your time. So that is something that is taking me a long time to even think about, let alone try to address, and I'm still trying to work on setting more time aside for not only myself but friends and family, which I think is important. So, and maybe not as important to others, but whatever is important to you, you have to find that balance and be able to stick to that. So Julia, the program manager, asks, what is your daily routine like? Well, kind of just touched on that a little bit, and how does it change? So since this is an abnormal routine, I'm not going to go over this routine because that's totally abnormal. I don't know what this is, and hopefully we're never in this kind of a routine again. But never say never, I guess. But typically my routine is based off of our match schedule. And so in season, we pretty much operate, backwards from match day. Okay. So you have your match day -1, -2, et cetera, et cetera. So that depending on what day it happens on and what our schedule looks like, I'm typically there though on a daily basis around 7:15, between 7 and 7:15. And I usually in the morning, in the past I have worked out in the morning prior to practice, and I've found that I become a zombie at like 4 p.m. and can't hold a conversation with someone, so I stopped doing that. I found myself hitting the wall at like 1, and that was not good, especially because that's right when we start to work in the weight room and the guys come in, and you have to have a little bit more energy during that time, or not have your words turn to mush and be able to think clearly. So that is something that I don't necessarily do anymore, but a personal goal of mine has been to become more aware of, that sounds terrible, become more aware of the outside world, right? I was super hyper focused on what I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to do in strength and conditioning. And for the longest time, I kind of felt like I was in my own little strength and conditioning bubble. And so something that I've been doing every day is listening to a podcast, about current events, the news, things going on in the world, because that is important. And so that's been a goal of mine, but that's how I start my day. A cup of coffee, a good podcast with the news, and my dog usually likes to be held and requires a lot of attention in the morning before I leave her. So that is also something that is part of my routine. I am also a yoga instructor, so if meditation is something that you do best in the morning, I think that that's really important. But like I said, for me, being able to have a cup of coffee and sit with my dog and listen to the news and kind of, and sometimes obviously sometimes I don't listen to anything and I just kind of sit there. I think that time is valuable for me, and I need that during the day. Which is a lot to talk about for the first 30 minutes of my day. So I'll move on to the rest of the schedule. But basically, when I get to the facility, we have a meeting and change into our uniform and discuss everything from programming of that day, specific protocols for certain athletes and what they're doing, and then the athletes start to trickle in. So in the morning they have movement prep, or some of them like to do their strength work prior to the field. So I'm in the weight room pretty much the majority of the morning, and then we go out to practice. We have practice, and I do pretty much everything in practice, and also assist the data analyst with the on-field load management. So that has been something that I've taken an interest to, and I've started to do in this past season more regularly. And that's everything from what we get with Stat Sports, which is what we use as a monitoring system. And after practice, we come in and the guys get their post-workout shakes. Important to get your protein in. And then they come into the weight room and we do our actual lifts. So they lift 3 to 4 times a week, depending on how they feel and who they are, what position they are. And so that's a little bit more than what other programs do, and that's more of our philosophy. So I'm in the weight room after practice and helping them get to it. And then after that, we have lunch all together. So, it's a chance for us to communicate as humans and connect on a different level than just your soccer talk every day. And then we also have meetings afterwards as a staff. And what else? I feel like I'm spending a lot of time on my schedule. But after that, it repeats, it's the same thing over and over again. No, I'm just kidding. But then afterwards, anything that you need to do to complete the day, and that's usually when I try to get my workout in before I head home and either pick up my dog from a daycare. Sometimes I take her to that, or try to get her to take a walk and try to rejuvenate, and anything else that I have planned for the evening. So that's usually what my schedule looks like. It can be different depending on what time we start practice or how long practice is. So that is all subject to change. We could all of a sudden decide to have a practice, and we normally wouldn't have a practice. So like I said, in professional sports, everything is subject to change. So that is definitely something that comes with the territory and something to expect. And during the off season, we really go into a mode of guys that stay here. It's all voluntary, and they stay here and we provide training for them. They all have their off season program provided to them on their phones, and through an app that we utilize, and so they have access to that at any point. And then the guys that are in town and local and that stay here have the opportunity to train with us as a performance staff 4 days a week. And so days are a little bit shorter. I'm only usually there from 8 to 12 or 1 depending on the day. And then whoever it is, they might have specific needs and other things for us to do. But that's pretty hands off from the technical standpoint, so we do as much as we can, but that's just something that we provide them. Okay, so Karen would like to know, what education do you have to become a strength coach? You don't necessarily, you do have to have specific education. Their exercise science is recommended. However, like most things, I didn't go about it in that specific path. I gained a lot of experience in other ways. But I also took, all of the science courses. So I actually started out in medical dietetics and ended up switching to a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in photography. So you're probably thinking, what? So I did that, and that was after I transferred back to Ohio State and spent a year or two in medical dietetics. But like I said, I had all of the science courses that I would have needed, and I was passionate about photography and I wanted to do photojournalism, and I enjoyed that. But on top of that, I was still a head field hockey coach and working as a personal trainer and as an instructor. So I was working with a lot of the athletic teams through that department. I worked with, men's ice hockey, women's ice hockey, volleyball, all at Ohio State, and a few other teams as well, men's and women's swimming. So I was still very involved with athletics and sports performance in a different way. So I think that it's important to figure out if that's what you want to pursue. They're going to make it harder and harder for you not to have an exercise science degree. So obviously that's what I would recommend. But if you have all the science classes and you still take all the science classes, it's just like anything. You can pretty much get any major that you want. It might take you longer to graduate. But if you want to pursue that, you just need to be able to take those prereqs to set yourself up for, something in the future. So I think that that's my biggest recommendation is to be able to take those classes so that you have that foundational knowledge. And I ended up getting I did an internship at Ohio State and then got my master's degree in sports sciences. So, then I went on to get more specific. And once I got to my master's program, I was more passionate about those classes, and I ended up taking classes that weren't required in my major, that were, more on the sports science orientation, and because I wanted that knowledge again, and I wanted to be able to even learn more about that. So something maybe I regret a little bit and not doing right away, but you don't always know what you want your path to be until you find it. And so I don't think that there's a wrong path that you can take to strength and conditioning. You just have to be passionate about it and know that that's what you want to do. And however you get to that point is okay, because that's just going to give you other experiences that you can build off of. So within reason still, obviously. And so her next question is, would you prefer to work with a women's team? And I would have to say, not necessarily. I think that as an athlete, I've had a lot of male coaches, and not because I specifically sought out male coaches, but I think for whatever reason, I've ended up with a lot of them, and they've had a major influence on me. So I don't know that affected me, but maybe on another level it did, because I tend to gravitate towards the male athlete, and I've worked with a lot of male teams, and I don't know how that happened, to be honest. But I just always felt like I was able to connect with the male athletes a little bit easier and motivate them on a different level, just because of the way that they are and the way that they think. But I enjoy just as much working with female athletes, and when I was a head coach for women, obviously, and me being a female, I think, I can pretty much relate to any of them, and I just happen to be in these opportunities. So I'm grateful that the guys that I work with now are a wonderful group, and they're hardworking, and their respect for me is, as if I were, doesn't really matter whether I'm male or female, I feel like, to them. So I think that that's important for me. And no, I wouldn't necessarily feel like I need to work with a women's team. As I get older, I don't know if that'll change. I think that early on when I was younger in strength and conditioning, you never really see yourself as being, I don't want to say influential, but being like a role model in overall women in sports, maybe. And I didn't necessarily see myself that way, but as I've started to realize that, I think it would be unique to work with women again, because, just having a little bit different perspective now that I'm a little older, and being able to, help them in a different way, I think would be interesting to see. And then her third question was, how does your salary compare to men in the field? Well, that is a good question. I don't necessarily know that. I know that strength and conditioning as a whole, I think, struggles with compensation in terms of compensating individuals for what they're worth. And I think that the overall governing body of strength and conditioning is working really, really hard to change that, because the amount of work that it requires to be a strength coach is becoming more and more. And just to give you an idea of everything that I did, I interned at Ohio State, and then I went on to get my master's degree in sports science. And while I was doing that, I was a graduate assistant, and I also worked with Ohio football and all their athletic teams under that department as an intern coach. And then I got an internship with the Columbus Crew, and then I went on to get my Yoga 500-hour certification, my USAW, and my Reflexive Performance Reset certification. And then I went on to intern at UNC, and I'm, counting all of these. I went on to intern at UNC, which Greg let me go into, because originally I was supposed to stay and intern with the crew for a year, but Greg let me go because it was his alma mater, so I was allowed. But went to UNC, which is a great experience. I got to work with their soccer program and some really, really unique individuals. And then came back and worked at the Spot Athletics as a performance coach and was hired full-time by the Columbus Crew. So I don't know how many that is. I don't know if that was an accurate counting of how many, but it was a lot, right? And so you don't just get this position overnight, which is something that, I'd like to stress, and I think everyone in strength and conditioning knows that you have to go through a lot and be able to stay positive and still keep grinding through those situations to get in a position and be able to finally be successful. But that's also because it's a craft, and you have to be able to master the certain aspects of it in order to be a successful coach. So you need the practice, you need those experiences, and all of those are going to be very valuable to you. So that's something that I think strength and conditioning needs to work on as a governing body, is compensating those, because when it's treated like it's not something that requires a whole lot of experience and knowledge, that's a really, really sad aspect of strength and conditioning that I think that we should definitely be compensated for our time and our work, and that's just for everything. So that is my piece of advice on that. So the last group of questions, Erin, senior program manager, sorry. So she would like to know, who are my biggest role models and what I would say to other girls wanting to pursue a career in sports. So piggybacking off of kind of what I've talked about, like all of my experiences, I've been really, really lucky in being able to find role models and mentors along the way that have helped me become the coach that I am today and get to this position. So I think every single person that I've come in contact with, and there's a long list of those individuals that have helped develop me as a coach along the way. And so those are probably my biggest role models in overall. So I think it's important to have those people in your life that are your mentors and that you can talk with and speak to. And definitely now at the crew, Clive, who is our high performance director, is one of those that is extremely helpful and someone I look up to as a role model and a coach. So that's definitely what has developed me and contribute to a lot of my success. So those are probably my biggest role models. And then also outside of that, any of the females who have paved the way for strength and conditioning as a whole, and one of the first ones that I ever talked to was Rachel Balkovec, who was the first strength coach for the MLB, and she has always been a continued supporter and a role model for what she does. So that's just one to name a few, but there are a ton of people that I definitely look up to. And what do I say to other girls wanting to pursue a career in sports? I would say that is awesome. I love that, and there are not enough women that want to pursue strength and conditioning, especially, or even a career in sports. But I would say that a couple of things that you have to do in order to be successful, and that is know yourself. You have to know what you stand for and what your worth is, and don't let anyone change that. So I think that's really important, because you're gonna hear no a lot. You're gonna not get put down, but you're gonna you're gonna feel small. Yeah, which I'm already small. I'm 5'2", so I felt small before. But that's something that you have to own your confidence. Like I said before, you have to be able to do that. And so I think that knowing yourself and knowing your worth, that's going to be important, because you're going to have to fight for that. And being relentless in what you're pursuing, you have to go at it relentlessly. And like I said, when I wasn't back going through all of that, I had that tunnel vision of this is what I want to do. This is, I'm blocking everything else out, and realized that I did make a lot of sacrifices, and there were a lot of times where I didn't see my friends and didn't see my family, and so that is something that you have to be willing to sacrifice, I think, in sports, because sports is, at the end of the day, still an entertainment business, especially in professional sports. And so I think that you have to realize that the times that it's going to take place is going to be when people want to be entertained, and that schedule doesn't always work out with everyone. So you definitely have to be willing to pursue it relentlessly and be able to give up some of those things. And the last thing that I think is really important is, other than, being relentless, not giving up, is being able to pick out and select the experiences that you're going to benefit from the most, and know that the people that you meet during those experiences, you don't know what necessarily they'll be able to help you with, and so always being grateful for those experiences, because you never know when you're going to get that opportunity, and you have to be ready for it, and you might not always feel ready for it, but you have to throw yourself into it. So I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people avoid contacting someone, like reaching out to a strength coach or reaching out to me per se, because they're scared, or they don't have anything to say, etc. Who knows what the reason is, but you have to be willing to do that and take that leap of faith, no matter what you're feeling, and even if you're not ready. So I think that that's something I should probably take as my own advice, right? We all need our own advice, but something you need to do. Just, you have to go get it, and not be afraid to reach out to certain individuals. That was one of the ways that I got my strength and conditioning internship, and I didn't realize that it would come as far as it has. So I think that that's really, really important, is not being afraid to reach out and try to get those things that you really want, and say what you want. Don't be afraid to say it. All right, well, if you have listened to all of this, you're a wonderful individual. I tend to talk a lot if you get me going. But feel free to honestly reach out to me. Like I said, don't be afraid to reach out to me at any point, ask any questions. And you should also make sure that you keep an eye out for, hopefully I'll get this right, for the Girl Scout night, which is going to be on August 15th versus New England. Fingers crossed that game actually happens, so right now. Really hoping that is, but be on the lookout for the Girl Scout night that evening, and hopefully I will see you all there, and I look forward to maybe even eventually meeting some of you. So thank you for having me, and also continue to stay healthy and safe and positive at home. Remember, we are all in this together. So thank you all, and bye-bye.